Thank you
So,
so much.
so let's jump into your story, and I have to say it's a very complex story.
Mm,
It is a real roller coaster of a ride, uh, and with lots of really high ups and really
yes,
low downs.
yes,
And
yes.
you describe yourself as somebody who doesn't have a medium setting. That kind of stuck with me. That it's either you're full bore,
Yes.
whatever it is,
Yes.
up or full bore negative. So,
Yeah.
so let's jump into your story. Where did you grow up, and in what sort of family?
I grew up in Manchester in United Kingdom. I now live in San Antonio, Texas, just to be sure about that one. But I grew up in Manchester, a lower working class family is what I grew into. My dad used to dig the roads for the gas company and repair the big gas mains going down the streets. It was a good job, but it was a working class job, which is fine. And my mom cleaned other people's houses, which again was fine. So we didn't really have a lot of money around. So I was always the kid that never went on school trips because mum couldn't afford it. I was always the kid with no briefcase or satchel because the parents couldn't afford it. So we definitely was paycheck to paycheck. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
And we definitely was, that family that was hand downs from, me to my brother and so on and so forth. So, but it was lots of love in that house, David, and a lot of things happened. But we were told categorically from an early age to lie. We were taught how to lie, and as in my mum was very embarrassed where she lived. So, if somebody was to call like a salesman, we had a notepad at the side of the phone, and we would to give this other address, which was from the posh area of town. And I always remember that sticking in my mind that then I become the enmeshment of that situation. I become embarrassed about where we lived. So I'd made sure that one day we used to go playing football, and one of the kids, her friends at school, said, "Hey, Rob, my dad's going to pick us all up tonight, make it nice and easy instead
mm,
of getting the bus." And I was horrified, David. In fact, I give the same address, the posh address. I had to run there 30 minutes before and wait outside this house because they come from a posh family to pick me up in the car and then go and play soccer. We come back again. He dropped me off. I would be waving like a crazy kid, bye, bye,
yeah,
hoping they would drive off. And
right.
then when they finally drove off, I ran back home to the house. So I
I
also
can
remember that
really
memory.
identify with that story. Um, there were times when I remember hiding. We were hiding from the bill collector, and
Mm,
would have to duck down beneath the window with my mother and laying on the floor. And also in high school, the unexpected visit of some friends who wanted to pick me up, and we'd all go to the beach. And and I went through that same sort of feeling of shock and shame and so on. So I can really identify what you're describing. And in your early school years, I think you carried with you some of that trauma, and you were a slight kid, uh, and sometimes a victim of bullying,
mm,
and um, and kind of a shy kid in
mm.
contrast with how you are now.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think that was the learned behavior from parents. They sort of hid in the background. They were great people, and I carried that through. So the bullying took a toll on me. It really did. But, and I say this with a capital B, I have the alcoholic mind. So I wasn't. There's always a solution for a problem. That's what our trials and tests and scientific research has proven. So I got my mom and dad somehow to pay 20 cents a week so I could go and learn karate and then boxing to make sure that I never got bullied again. And that seems to be my whole life, is doing the unexpected far more than people would give me credit for. It
Right.
always amazes me today, but that come from that. So I'd walk into school, especially when I did the bodybuilding, and people go, "Oh my goodness, Rob's here. Oh, don't mess with him." And I would honestly look around in the early days going, "Who are they talking about?" Because I had this massive body, with the still the mind of that scared child.
Sure,
And
sure.
it was very confusing. There was nobody there in my family or doctors or therapists back then that could say to me, "Hey, here's what's happening to you, Rob." So it was quite discerning for a long while.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, you, actually, you in the I don't know, maybe it was in middle school or high school where you began to really you were also a musician. Your family got you into a family band, and you learned to play the guitar. I even see a guitar behind you there,
Yes.
electric
Yes.
guitar, and you had quite a bit of success as a musician in this
Mm.
very complex life of yours. So scary part, and I identify with the wanting to learn martial arts. I
Mm.
also went into martial arts in high school, uh, hoping to be like in the cartoons, the little guy who could throw the big guy over his shoulder, or do something magical like that. Uh, so totally understand that impulse, but with your alcoholic predilections, you took it pretty far, and it was scary even to read that you developed a rather massive body, and and
Yeah.
even got into steroids, and
Yes.
so had some degree, it sounds like, of what they call roid rage,
Yes.
and even began to work as a bouncer and became something of a thug,
Yes.
working for a Manchester thug of some note,
Yes.
and narrowly avoided prison. There was actually a very uh, serious crime committed by your group or your gang that the luck of the grace of God somehow that you stepped back just enough to miss that.
It's really weird because people say when I go on the show they read the book, and I've never read the book. I give pieces to my wife, and she kind of built this book. But oh my goodness, yes, I remember that. I so remember that. And yeah, I should be in jail. I should have got life inside probably by now because I was out of control. And the only thing that stopped me was going away to university, which again I shouldn't have gone to, by rights, but I have ways and means, and I'm very clever when it comes to manipulating people and places and situations around me. But I think if I would have stayed in the same house on uh, that's a couple of blocks, we call it an estate of about 6,000 houses, because that's the time when heroin started to hit really bad, and crack cocaine, and all my friends are dead because of heroin overdoses. So I think I scraped through that. I scraped through by God's grace, not being involved in the armed robbery, and everyone went to prison for some unknown reason. It seems like God, and if you don't believe in God, guys, universe, Uncle John, whatever you believe in, but God kept me away because I truly believe that He had a plan for me. Because my life doesn't make sense. How can
No,
someone from the projects go to an esteemed? I mean, that doesn't
no, you
happen.
you got into Oxford against all
Yes,
expectations,
yes,
Oxford University, and so you were born with a brain that was a real mixed bag
yes,
of, on the one hand, this terrible addiction, and on the other hand, incredible native intelligence,
yes.
and smart enough to get into Oxford, very prestigious place, and even to eventually get a PhD in
Mm.
psychology there.
Mm.